Going to talk to our pal John Keim now. John Keim covers the Commanders for ESPN.com. How many years have you now been on the beat, John?
I think this is my 31st season.
Oh, my God.
31 years, so a little bit longer than the Junkies.
Only a couple.
I told my wife one Super Bowl run and I'm out. So here I am 31 years later.
Yeah, I was going to say that it feels familiar. Even though it's a different story, it feels familiar.
Yeah.
One thing we were kicking around was the lack of passing really beyond 10 yards, right?
Right.
You took a couple of deep shots,
concern.
but there was nothing intermediate, 7 passes behind the line of scrimmage. And we were trying to figure out, is that, and it's probably a combination, but I want to get your take, was that Kingsbury's offense? Is that Jayden not seeing guys downfield? Is it receivers not getting open?
Well, so that's one thing that is on my list of things when I'm rewatching today, right? Because sometimes it's hard without to see, are they getting open or not? Now, it didn't look like there was a lot of separation a lot of times. There were a couple times, for example, where I think it was like he had like a 9-yard run. Oh, no, it was like a third down, and it was like 3rd and long or something like that. But there were a couple guys open. There was like McCaffrey's running down the seam. I don't know if he gets it to him, but the pressure was right there, right? Like I think Wiley let up some pressure on that one. And so sometimes there were plays that were, okay, maybe, and then the pressure was there, so you don't have time. I also wonder about the separation as well, because – this isn't like when you watch Tampa, there's just a different with the depth of the receivers they have and the ability to get open and the ability to threaten. And these guys don't have that. They have, McLaurin got open on the deep one, but they didn't target him that much. So I think some of that, certainly some of the behind the line stuff was a combination, a result of they're getting a lot of pressure early, right? And they knew they were going to attack him with that. So I think it's give him an easy answer. And then if you're going to attack against that defense and they're blitzing, then a good way to do that is also hit some big plays because they're going to give you some one-on-ones. But they just weren't there except for the one.
John, I feel like the number 2 wideout spot is going to be an aggregate of Eckler and Ertz at this point.
Correct.
Like, do you feel that too?
I felt that going in because I think, and that's where like I thought Ertz, and I still think Ertz will play a bigger role for Daniels. And I think Eckler will as well. Like you saw the run he had after the catch. Like that was kind of what he had done with the Chargers last year before the ankle sprain. So yes, I agree with you. Because I think if you're looking for Daniels, the security blankets are going to be those two, and he gives you good outlets, but also because we don't know like who is there. They've been clear that each of these other receivers offer them something, which I agree with, but is it enough to game in, game out have a consistent number 2? I don't see that. So I do agree with you. I think the number 2 targets would be like Eckler, Ertz. And so, and shoot, maybe even B-Rob.
Following up on that, do you think we see Noah Brown active next week against the Giants? Kind of early to tell, but what's your best guess there?
I don't know, and I will also say, when they signed him, some people felt like, he's not a number 2. Like that's not what he has been. He's been a good backup who is a good really good special teams player, and does a lot of things for you. I think the hard part to know then is if he's active, who isn't? Because you have Crowder is the punt returner. Then it's McCaffrey, Diami, and Zacchaeus, and all of them play more role on offense right now. But one thing that you also know is then they don't have this is a bigger target. And I think there were a couple of times where it felt like, you have, if you have size, you still have to be able to get open and run routes, right? We all know that. But they don't have anybody with that size to threaten them as a receiver. So, he gives you a little bit more than that, but not like he's a big guy. But I really don't know that he would be active, because then it's like I said, who is not, and then if Jameson's going to be a punt returner, he's going to always be active.
John, moving to the other side of the ball, the Buccaneers punted one time.
Yeah.
But I want to get specific because I didn't notice this during the game, but I did a post-game show with Craig Hoffman, and he said Forbes was benched. Can you fill us in on Emmanuel Forbes?
Well, I don't know if he was benched or hurt, but yes, I saw that too. And well, let me say this. Coincidentally, it would occur after a couple of rough series.
Mm-hmm.
But the reason I say that because he did go back in the game after the first time he came out, and then after the game he went into the X-ray room. But like Dan Quinn said, that it wasn't anything really big, right? So I don't know. I mean, again, the play warranted that, right? I mean, so whether it was the injury or whatever, it was coincided with him coming out after some rough series. And, so.
What, John, I listened to your pod on the way in. I always do. And we share a similar brain, unfortunately for you. I had a lot of the same observations. I thought Frankie Louvu was virtually I'm a little ruder than you. I'm a little more
Was he
crude.
invisible?
I thought he was virtually invisible.
You didn't feel him.
I didn't feel him. I felt Jamin more, frankly. And it's not like Jamin was some massive impact.
Right. No, but he did a nice job when he was in.
Yeah, I thought so too. Very disappointed in the interior of the line, although they had penetration and they were there. They didn't close the deal. And then, I don't know, man, it's been about a year and a half since I felt like we can really consistently stuff the run up there. I feel like even though the numbers don't show it, I felt like we were getting gutted right up the middle.
Yes. No, I felt like they were able to, because if you're getting 4 and 5 yards a time, like that's a good run game because you're always putting yourself ahead of the sticks, right? And so I felt like Tampa Bay was able to do that very well. And the hard part with the pass rush, and I agree with you, like I didn't feel the presence of guys that you need to feel, the tackles, the and Louvu, because that's why. And I still think that guy's going to be pretty good. Like you watch him last year, I
won't write him off.
Right. But for the first game, no. And but with the pass rush, one thing with Mayfield too. Mayfield, I mean, he's listed at 6 foot. I think that might be stretching a little bit. Mm-hmm. So the one thing when you'd watch him last year with the sacks and any picks, it's always a confined pocket. And I felt like they had too big of gaps on their pass rushes and where it consistently let them out. So, if you'd watch the sacks last year, it's like it's pinch, starts to move up, but it's so tight that somebody's able to get them. And they just didn't have that ability. And some of that I wonder, because, we'd always hear last year about the undisciplined pass rush and the freelancing. Well, I didn't feel like it was that, but I do wonder about the cohesion of it, because it's not like this group has worked together a lot in games. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing, like that's one of the things that with this, the way teams do preseason and the practices and all that, you don't get the same simulation that you would in the past. And I think that's something that still has to come along, because to me, like the ends are not dynamic, but they weren't meant to. They have the pass rushers inside. Those guys are going to be the ones that have to provide that with Frankie Louvu.
Right. Let's talk about the coaching a little bit. And again, I'll be ruder than you. But like, I didn't understand some of Quinn's decisions, frankly. I didn't know why we were bleeding the clock at the end of the first half. I'm thinking, all right, they're either going to score or they're not. So let's use a timeout right here, right? And I didn't understand the bleeding of that. It made no sense to me. I'm sure they had some logic. I didn't get it. And then I didn't understand listen, I'm not a big go for it on every fourth down, but we got a kicking situation here, and I don't know what the hell's going on with that. And then I just don't know what makes Cliff Kingsbury's. I'm just ignorant. I don't know what makes his offense special. I didn't see anything special. I didn't see the up-tempo stuff I felt like I was promised. And I just didn't see special creativity. I don't know. It was a blah for me. At least there was some balance. I felt like maybe they were hyper-focused on protecting, and maybe that's why there wasn't some more stuff developing sort of in the middle of the field and downfield. I don't know. But I just didn't see anything special from the offense other than Jayden's extraordinary ability.
Right, and I would say, like, for the up-tempo stuff, because that's one thing that we have heard, right, and that there'd be a lot of up-tempo. I do think when you're giving up third downs on defense and the defense is staying on the field, I think the offense has to be cognizant of that. Okay. And if you go up-tempo, you're putting a defense that is getting hit hard back on the field. And so you know what I mean? So like that, and I don't know that that's the reason, but when I'm watching, I'm like, well, that makes sense to me. Right. Yeah. Because, and it's also like 80 some degrees, it's humid, blah, blah. Yeah. So if you're not if you're not in this rhythm, then it's hard to do that. But I thought there'd be more. I still think there will be more. there were sometimes you'd see some of the run game creativity with the way they had Eckler and Robinson in the backfield together and like an I formation split off that got some yards, and you see some of the action of it. Like, okay, you can see that. I just felt like they had zero rhythm, and then part of it is it's just like any other year. If you're not converting on third downs and you're giving up third, you're not going to have the ability to extend your what you want to do. But I think that's all. It's up to question because we don't know. This is one game. We were told this, we heard this, and then this is the only game we have to judge by. So there's not a in other games they've done this. We don't know, and so I think that's you have to wait. I think the other one was the 2-point conversion, not going for it. Then and Dan Quinn said that, and they're very, very big on analytics, as we know, and they have someone the game management stuff. Oh, they're huge with it, way more than before. But they have a game management guy in the ear about telling them when to go for it or when not to, and they didn't. But that was one where I felt like
What about going for the 56-yarder at that point?
Yeah.
Like,
well,
what's the chart say on that? I mean, I don't know.
Well, I think that's all fair, and I think there are a couple times with that where you could try and do that because you do have a kid who can make plays with his legs.
Right.
And that always helps, right? That always gives you that other option in those situations. But the York one, I mean, he's very inconsistent and has been. The one thing he does have is a big leg. And so, if he's there, but the problem is he's 1 for 3. And this is what he's done in his career. So I think
that's going to be an issue the rest of the year.
With Caleb York, the chart should show impossible. When you look at it.
Hey, JK, let me ask you about getting back to Daniels. So he rushed 16 times. I realized the bulk of those were when he was forced out of the pocket.
Right.
But the last thing Kingsbury and Quinn want is him to run 16 times. So do you think that they're going to deliberately try and scale that back next week against the Giants?
Well, I think the hard part is the scrambles because it's hard to scale back.
Yeah.
And so I think that's yes, I would agree with you. He's not going to be able to, you don't want your quarterback running that many times. And now he did a good job of avoiding the hits, but all it takes is a couple. We saw one yesterday where, it's fortunate that he wasn't knocked out of the game on the helmet-to-helmet hit, right? So you want, and I think for those, you have to create situations. You need guys to get open, and you need to protect because those are the ways that you can mitigate that. He's not a guy that, he was always described as a passer who can run. Well, yesterday he had to run a lot, and so you need him to be a passer. That's supposed to be the difference for him compared to others, and I believe that based on watching in practice, based on watching him in college. Yes, he can run, but he wants to pass, and so that's how you can mitigate that. There were a couple designed runs, and maybe you can do a few less of those if it's a situation where he's running a lot, but you don't want him running that many times a game. No, absolutely
the good thing is you get the Giants next week at home. And Daniel Jones was terrible again. Daniel Jones is he's a bad quarterback.
Yep. Yes, he is.
So you get them, but who knows what the offense is going to look like with Washington?
This is the start of a regime, and there's been so much turnover and all that. So I get all that, and you take that into account. But this is a big game. It's a home game. It's Daniel's first home game. But it's also against a team that you continuously struggle to beat that's not good.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this is one where it's like it's always like this is going to be a year about measuring sticks and like where are they at with things? Do they compete? Do they do this and that? And if you do, or if you are that kind of team, you bounce back and have a good showing because you're right. Like the Giants are not very good. The problem that I have with the Giants is they have a couple pass rushers and, on the edges, and I think that's going to be a problem. That's something they have to deal with for sure. But, yes, you cannot let Daniel Jones beat you again. And because I think if you want to show fans it's different, go beat the Giants. That you have to take care of business in the NFC. So I don't care where you're at in your development. You have to do that. There's the thing I kept saying all summer was I think long-term I like what they're building. Short-term, you don't know where they're at. And I think there's still a lot of uncertainty about some areas. Some areas, cornerback play you were concerned with, and it's got to get better. Will it? So, but yeah, you've got to take care of business Sunday.